up, Red Raider Nation? Welcome back to a March Madness edition of the Nation's official podcast. We are your hosts. I am TJ Kern. That is my buddy Blake Hartsfield. Blake, March Madness has finally arrived. The Red Raiders are done with the regular season. They're done with the conference tournament. And do we want to start there? We talked last week about if they were going to try to win, and they actually beat Baylor. And then
Like
they
we said, they
lost.
needed to.
They lost to Arizona in a tough game without Chance McMillan and D5.
And JT playing sick. And it was a competitive game. I don't put any stock in the conference tournament, TJ. I think we came on this podcast last week, and I said they needed to win one game against Baylor, which they did. A little bit of a hang-on situation there at the end. The Bears threw a couple of different zone looks at them in the second half after a out-of-this-world first-half shooting performance from Texas Tech. And we didn't adjust well to that zone, but we hang on to win. They won the game that they needed to win. They get the 3 seed. And then, like you said, against Arizona, McMillan and D5 don't play, both nursing minor injuries. Sounds like if it was a tournament game, they could have played. And then JT Toppin had the flu. And even in that game, it was a 5-point game with, I think, 3 minutes to go. So they were competitive with JT having a very out-of-character game for him. I'm not worried. And TJ, let's turn our focus to the big tournament that matters that starts here in 2 days. And, man, I don't know about you, but I've always been a big believer in that the 2 best sports weekends of the year, year in and year out, is the first weekend of the tournament is the best sports weekend that there is over that 4 days. You can watch basketball from 11 a.m. in the morning until 11:30 or midnight at night. And for Tech fans, we're going to be the late game on Thursday, the game that goes until midnight. And then I also am partial to the weekend after the tournament with the Masters. I think that is a great 4-day week. So I can't wait. I love the tournament. This is 4 of my favorite sports days of the year.
Yeah, springtime is upon us. And, of course, I'm a big baseball guy. We had our fantasy draft this last weekend. And so Major League Baseball season is upon us. The weather's warming up, all the good things that come with springtime. So JT Toppin named second team All-America.
Yeah, congratulations to JT. Selfishly, I think he deserved to be on the first team. But, a second team is an outstanding accomplishment for him and for this program, and all the credit in the world to JT. He's been outstanding this year. I think it's likely he goes to the NBA draft. He's currently graded as a top of the second round guy. He's going to go through the combine, but TJ, I don't think it's impossible that the NBA scouts tell him that maybe go back to school for one more year, work on that right hand, right? Learn to go right and not just be able to go left, and continue to develop that jump shot to stretch the floor. I think he's gotten significantly better at that this year. But we'll see. I think it's likely he goes pro, but I'd put it at 80% pro, 20% back to Tech, depending on what the feedback is that he gets from those scouts.
And then before we get into the Tech draw and what all that looks like, what were your impressions of the overall tournament there? I know there's been some scandal with the North Carolina athletic director getting North Carolina in, him getting a 6-figure bonus, and you got teams like West Virginia and Indiana on the way out.
TJ, West Virginia being left out is criminal. In favor of North Carolina and Texas, for that matter. Texas didn't deserve to be in. But North Carolina, look, it's one thing to put North Carolina in, but the committee's justification is a joke, right? They make the argument, oh, well, they went 1-12 in quad one wins, and the last 2 years the Big 12 has had the first team left out, so this is 3 years in a row, and the argument has always been, well, they didn't take enough advantage of their quad one opportunities. Well, that went out the door when you put in North Carolina on 1-12 in quad one, and then secondly, their reasoning for leaving West Virginia out was they made the argument that, and it is part of the selection criteria, that injuries to players can be accounted for, and they made the argument that DeVries, the coach's kid, was out with injury. The problem with that, TJ, is he got hurt in November, and they have 4 of their 6 quad one wins after he's not been playing, which is still more than North Carolina accomplished. So what the committee just said is it doesn't really matter what you accomplish. You can have a better resume, but at the end of the day, the name on the front of the jersey means more than what you do on paper with your resume, and they proved that by putting teams like Texas and North Carolina in over a team like West Virginia. I feel really bad for them, and then it got worse for West Virginia with losing their coach this afternoon to Indiana, and I feel for the Mountaineers.
So let's get into it. The Red Raiders get the 3 seed in the Florida bracket, which is the number 4 1 seed. So I believe how that works is they are the number 1 3 seed. And they will be playing their games as close to Lubbock, Texas as possible in Wichita, Kansas. First round matchup, UNC Wilmington, with the other side of that pod being the 6-11 matchup with Missouri facing a guy that we are very familiar with, the head coach of Drake and Ben McCullum, who the Red Raiders tried to recruit to come be our lead assistant over the last couple of years. And he's done a phenomenal job leading Drake to the 30-3 mark that they are this year.
Yeah, TJ, I actually think this is a really good draw for Texas Tech. I think last year we had a little bit of a tough draw, obviously getting the hottest team in the country in NC State in the first round, but I think this is a really good pod, and I'm going to give you a couple of reasons why. First off, the first round game against UNC Wilmington, I'm going to be honest, I haven't done a super deep dive on UNC Wilmington like I do most years against our opponent. This is a team that came in second place in the regular season in their league, so they weren't even the best team in their league. They've played one, I looked at their schedule, they've played one meaningful opponent all year, and that was Kansas, and Kansas beat them by 20. You know, what jumps off the page analytically against them is they're sub 250 in 3-point defense, which is not a good matchup for them against the Red Raiders. And then the little bit of film that I watched and tape that I watched on them, the first thing that jumps off the screen to you when you watch them is they don't defend the pick and roll very well, and that just is a recipe for disaster. I think Hassela had this as like a 17 and a half point predictive metric in Tech's favor. I suspect this is a game where Tech pulls away early in the second half, and McMillan and D5 can get some rest late in the second half here, and Tech goes through pretty simply.
And who do you think, if they do advance, that 6-11 matchup is pretty salty there with Ben McCullum's Drake Bulldogs and Missouri?
Drake's going to beat Missouri.
I have that as well.
I think this is a nightmare matchup for Missouri. First off, if you believe Ken Palm and Trovic and Evan McKayla and guys like that, Missouri's probably one of, or not probably, I saw a graphic today on Twitter from EM that they are one of the 5 most overseeded teams in the field. They should be an 8 or a 9 seed. They're a 6. Drake is probably underseeded by a line or two. They probably could have been a 10, but they're an 11. Stylistically, Missouri wants to play at a breakneck pace, right? They average 80 plus possessions a game. They want to get up and down the floor, whereas Drake is going to turn this into a snail's pace, rocket up the floor. And I think Drake's going to beat Missouri on their defense, and then they'll score just enough to edge out a close one. And then in the second round against the Red Raiders, Drake is not going to be an easy game. Neither would Missouri, but it won't be an easy game. But it's a game that I just don't know that Drake can score enough to beat Texas Tech. They'll slow the game down, and Tech's fine playing a slower game, right? We'll run when we have opportunities to do so, but we're not exactly we're incredibly efficient offensively, but we're in, I think, sub 150 in tempo in the country. So we don't mind playing a slower pace game. And I just think if we get to 70, which we do almost everybody we play against, I don't know how Drake scores 70 to beat you. So I really like this pod. I like the Red Raiders to get through to the Sweet 16 fairly comfortably. Obviously, you got to go take care of business. But it should be a pro-Tech crowd in Wichita. Houston's also there, and I suspect that Houston and Tech fans will root for one another for the Big 12. And it's only 5 hours from Dallas, which is our biggest alumni base. So it's just like going out to Lubbock for a game. I just think Tech's going to get through the Sweet 16.
I am hoping so, especially like you said, after last year's first round exit. I'm looking forward to at least, we talk about it all the time. If you can get to the second weekend, anything after that is just gravy. So getting through this first weekend is what counts. And I do like our chances. Now, that 2019 team that did make it to the championship game, they were a 3 seed, my friend.
In the West, having to go through California in the second weekend. So there's a lot of similarities there. And TJ, that second weekend, first matchup at least in the Sweet 16, I really like Texas. Again, I really like this draw, right? Like everybody in the national media is discounting Tech because they're all enamored with St. John's and Rick Pitino, who were the 8th and 9th overall seeded teams in the field. They were the last 2. You were the first 3. And everybody's, all enamored with St. John's being good for the first time since the 80s, and Rick Pitino being back in a top 10 team or whatever. But you look at, again, I come back to matchups, and that's what so much of this tournament is. You know what St. John's is, TJ? They are a less offensively talented and not quite as good defensively Houston. It's like Houston light, and Tech's already proven that that's a game and a style that they're happy to play. They don't score the ball nearly as efficiently as Houston. They don't shoot the ball nearly as efficiently as Houston, and they're not quite as good defensively. Now, they're very good defensively, but the way you beat teams like this is with shooting and movement, and that's exactly what the Red Raiders are. And I think that with that game being on the West Coast, on the opposite side of the country for St. John's, they're not going to have a crowd presence. It's going to be a neutral floor. Like I like Tech to win that game if it's St. John's. And if St. John's gets upset, which I'm not convinced that they're going to get there, are you afraid of Kansas? I'm not afraid of Kansas.
I'm not afraid of Kansas.
I'm not afraid of Kansas. And I think Kansas presents some problems. If Arkansas beats Kansas, which I think that they very well could, I think St. John's can handle Arkansas. But I think Kansas, with their size, is going to present some problems for St. John's. So it'll be interesting to see. The Elite Eight matchup, you're probably looking at Florida more than likely, although we'll get to our picks here in a few minutes. And Florida's tough. So we'll see what happens. I like Tech to get to the Sweet 16. And if it is St. John's, I really like that matchup because Kansas, I definitely like that matchup.
Well, let's get to it, man, here on the Nation's Official Podcast. Let's start in the South. Give me your Elite Eight and your Final Four.
This is going to be a little chalky here, TJ. I've got Auburn and Michigan State, the 1 and the 2, and I like Michigan State to get to the Final Four out of the South.
All right. I am rolling. I know Iowa State's been banged up. Not sure exactly what their status is. But, man, call me Mr. Big 12 Homer. I'm going Iowa State and Auburn with Iowa State getting to the Final Four in San Antonio.
I love it. I would love to see Iowa State get there. I'm concerned with their injuries right now.
All right. And then let's scroll on down to the West, which is our bracket, the Florida and St. John's Tech bracket.
Okay. Here's my upset pick of the tournament, TJ. Give me the Crab 5 in Maryland to upset Florida, who everybody in the country is picking as the national champion in the Sweet 16, to play Tech, and I like Tech to beat Maryland to go to a Final Four and get to San Antonio. I'm picking a little bit with my heart, but TJ, again, I look at this bracket, and the only team that I would legitimately be afraid to play is Florida. But I just think Maryland, with their starting 5, can pull that upset off and shock the country. I think Maryland's underseeded. A lot of the analytics sites think they should be a 3 seed. So that's my upset pick. I'll take Tech over Maryland.
And I am also rolling with my heart here. Got the Red Raiders in the Elite Eight with the Florida Gators, I do believe, once again. There's 2 schools that always seem to be in our way in these types of things. The Florida Gators and the Arkansas Razorbacks.
Michigan, too. I feel like we've played them a couple of times in the tournament in the last 4 or 5 years.
Yeah. So, but I'm going with Florida and Tech, with Tech getting to the Final Four out of the West.
Okay.
Then we go over to the East. That is the Duke bracket. Cooper Flagg said to be good to go after that scary ankle injury. We'll see how he holds up. What say you out East?
TJ, could they have given Duke a more cakewalk path to the Elite Eight than they've got? I mean, my goodness. I guess Arizona would be the only team that might be able to give them a game, but I'm not sure Arizona is going to survive their first weekend, having to play up in Seattle against Oregon, potentially in a round of 32 game and playing on the road. I think this is Duke all the way from the top half of this region, and from the bottom half. Believe it or not, I actually like BYU to make a run to the Elite Eight out of this bottom half. I like them to upset Wisconsin, and then I think that they win an offensive run it up and down. Game played in the high 80s, low 90s against Bama, and then I've got Duke advancing to the Final Four over BYU.
Got it. All right, I am going with Arizona versus Bama, and Bama going to the Final Four.
Okay, I like that.
And then finally, we got the Houston bracket.
I think Houston rolls this bracket, TJ. I really do. I have so much, how much respect I have for that program and just how they compete, their toughness, their ability to defend. I've got them in the top half, and then I actually like Tennessee. I'm going to go chalk here again, 1 and a 2, with Houston going to the Final Four.
And I am with you there, Houston, Tennessee. Houston going to the Final Four. So to recap, my Final Four is a little homerish. It's a lot of Big 12 teams. We've got Iowa State, Tech, Houston, and then Bama. Roll Tide in my Final Four. And
Okay.
who's your Final Four again?
Michigan State against Tech and Houston against Duke. So 2 1s, a 2 and a 3.
Got it. And then give me your championship matchup and your champion.
DJ, this again, it's a little bit of a homer pick, but I do think this could legitimately be the championship game. And in San Antonio, the semifinals at a minimum is going to be a home game, and I think we would have the crowd again. But I've got Tech in a rematch of the 2019 Final Four, beating Michigan State in a pseudo home game. I've got Houston knocking off Duke. And then as much as it pains me to make this pick, I think it will be a very close competitive game, but I have to pick the Houston Cougars. I just think that they're the best. If you ask me who's the best team in the country, I struggle to not say Houston. They go 19-1 in this conference. You know how I feel about the Big 12 as a whole. Yes, I know that the one loss was to Tech. Yes, I know that Tech battled their asses off against them in Lubbock, shorthanded, and made that game competitive. But with both teams at full strength, it's hard for me to bet against Houston, as much as I love our Red Raiders.
And we didn't talk before this. We both have Tech in the Final Four. We both have a Tech Houston championship game.
Are you picking Tech?
I'm going with the Red Raiders,
all
baby.
Right. I love the homer pick, TJ. I love it.
I'm Homer all the way. Let's get it done. Let's get a third matchup that we were cheated against. I want Houston again.
Yeah, there's not a team that I would rather play. I would love to get a third shot at Houston, fully healthy, and let both teams just go at it, because I think both of those games have been so much fun to watch. And I hope to God that I am wrong, because if we get to the Final Four, I will be in the building without a doubt. So I hope to God that I am wrong and that we get it done. But my head says I got to pick Houston.
Yeah, well, there you go here on the Nation's Official Podcast as we get you ready for weekend 1 of March Madness. Blake, anything else before we get out of here?
I think when's tip off? It's like 9:10.
Isn't it like a 9 o'clock tip?
Well, scheduled for 9, which means knowing how the tournament goes, and you're playing on the court after 30 minutes after the conclusion of Drake and Missouri. I wouldn't be shocked to see this game tip off at 9:30 or 9:45.
Gotcha.
Which stinks, but we're the last game of the day on Thursday.
Which is exciting. Tech's getting a lot of love nationally. A lot of the pundits are, on the Red Raiders, and JT Toppin, well deserved after a good season here. So, and I went with my heart. Yeah, we're trying to win a natty, so let's go get it done here.
Well, it makes you feel better, TJ. I'll leave our listeners with this last little analytics drop that I saw today from Trovic. The team of all the tournament teams in the field, the team that lost the most minutes and production this season to injury of their rotation, with the caveat of players who are not out for the year, right? So players that were hurt, that came back, that are part of rotation. Tech by far lost the most minutes in production between D5 and Chance McMillan of any team in the field. So you like to think that they might be a little underseeded just because of what they've probably lost a game or two that they would have otherwise had won. So there's reason to believe in this Tech team. We've talked about just the general feeling with this team and how similar it is to 2019. And enjoy the ride, guys, because I think they're about to take you on a fun one.
Let's do it. It's win or go home time here for the Red Raider basketball team. Blake, how do we always get out of here?
Wreck 'em.
Wreck 'em. We'll talk to you guys next time right here on the Nation's official podcast.